one of the things that you have to remember is you can always doubt the self-doubt. So a lot of the people that I work with are, I wouldn't necessarily say logically minded, but I would say they are skeptically minded. And actually that skepticism is something which has served them quite well in life, which is why it has become so deeply ingrained, even after maybe having gone through a lot of spiritual practices, doing shadow work, all this kind of very intuitive practices that are very subjectively based and don't have an objective measurement to overcome them, or don't have an objective measurement rather to measure. So they can't say, yeah, if I measure this over a certain amount of time period, then suddenly my happiness goes from a 6 out of 10 to a 8 out of 10. Like, there's no way to measure that, right? However, this skeptical part, which is actually really healthy for their internal ecosystem, sometimes it's been given a little bit too much power, because also if you've found this path, if you found this kind of work, if you found my channel, all that kind of stuff, all the mentors that we work with together, if you find all of that, then most of the time it's because you're pretty independently minded. And skepticism helps with that quite a lot, because it causes you to question a lot of the conventional things that are happening around you, right? Not because you're better or worse or you're smarter or anything like that, but mainly just because you see that things around you, they don't really measure things in the way that you want them to be measured. An example being like fulfillment and happiness is not necessarily something which is so encouraged in the Western world over getting achievements or getting a good job or being a respected person or pillar of society, whatever you want to do it. There's so many different ways that you can measure it, right? And causes you to question this kind of conventional way of looking at things and value other things, you know? Like, you've already gotten a success that you wanted, you've already gotten the achievements, or you haven't got all of them, but you've already gone down that path and seen that it's not going to take you from A to B. A to B being the path that's actually going to fulfill you. It's not going to get you there. So this skepticism makes you skeptical of the way. If you didn't have this, then what would happen? Well, if you didn't have this, then you would not question it. It wouldn't even be an option. You would just think there's something wrong with you most of the time. And this happens quite a lot. You think there'd be something wrong with you, and then you're the one that has to change and adapts to the world rather than you finding something new. And this self-doubt is good, like we said, but it becomes a problem when it becomes our default and it's not part of an ecosystem, of an internal system, right? Of an internal, the way I like to look at it is almost like an internal democracy we have inside of ourselves. And in this internal democracy, doubt is welcome, but it shouldn't become the absolute, which is what happens. Like, one of the reasons that I've decided to make this video was I have maybe 3 clients at the moment which have this problem where they doubt, and it stopped them from getting into a lot of bad situations. One of them used to deal drugs before he became a medical doctor and then started his own business, so a successful guy. When they got him out of that pathway, got him to question that. Another one is, I'm not sure exactly what he does, but he's semi-retired, made his money, made his success, you know, has good relationships, all that kind of stuff. And the doubt served him very well there, because in his job, from what I can gather, it means that he has to question quite a lot. A lot of his work requires quite a lot of rigorous effort and questioning, and if you don't have that, then the things aren't going to be accurate and you're not going to get paid and something's going to go bad, right? And then the other one is a software engineer. Obviously you have to be quite skeptical and doubtful of yourself in that. Not necessarily of your abilities, but doubtful of if it's going to be the solution. Because as you often know, if something's just a tiny thing is wrong with the code, it just breaks everything. So you have to use all of that. However, because they've leaned on this skill for such a long time, and it's become something which in some ways has defined them, right? This is the the danger of allowing like a certain skill or attribute about yourself to becoming you, basically. It's enabled that. It means that when it comes to actually trusting, whether they become, thank you, whether you become a new person or not, it makes it really difficult. And that is one of the skills which you have to get much better at if you're going to make breakthroughs in this kind of work, make insights in this kind of work. Why? Because if you're so used to using objective data to measure where you're going, like the example I used from the beginning, right? Which is, oh yeah, my happiness is objectively a 6 out of 10. How do I get that an 8 out of 10? Well, you can measure that subjectively, but there's no like outside data which is tracking that. You're gonna have to be the judge of that. But if you have an overactive skepticism, an overactive doubt, then that's actually not gonna let you do that, really, because you know that it also comes with a certain degree of humility. You know how many times you've been wrong, and you don't want to be wrong this time, right? So how could I possibly measure that? But because we're talking about happiness, fulfillment, whilst still on the path of achieving things and doing pretty well in life, you're going to have to be that person. Like, there's no one else that can measure that. Like, well, the guy who's semi-retired, successful guy, he kept on asking me, like, oh, is there, like, he's seeing subjective benefits in the meditation that we're doing, which is just like something we're doing on the side alongside shadow work and coaching. And he's seeing like real benefits of it. Like, he's feeling more peaceful, he's feeling more happy, he's feeling more relaxed, he's feeling a little bit able to get a bit more into being more loving as well, although that's a bit more of a block for him. But he's seeing all of these subjective benefits, but he's still asking, oh, but how do I know this is working? Well, there's how you know it's working, right? Like, it's not like I can go in and feel it for you and then be like, yeah, this is working, you know? So I opened this with, you can always doubt the self-doubt, because part of the broader point I'm making in the first point, which is you can lean on something, be careful of making something your identity, basically, because it can define you in a way that you don't want. The second part of this is going to be those of you who kind of are already aware of this, but they can't seem to kind of break out of the doubt loops. What does that mean? What it means is, like, I know that I've made a lot of progress, a lot of big progress, and I just can't seem to accept it. I can't seem to make the breakthrough. I can't seem to actually pull the trigger. This also comes with decision making and leading as well, right? Like, a lot of the time, probably people who are watching this can even say, like, I know that I could have been a leader in this situation, or I could have said this thing, and actually the ideas that I had in my head when it came for a group activity, let's say it's in work or something, and you have a problem, you need to come to a solution, and you have a solution, but you don't say it out loud, but then the group ends up choosing a solution which is either the same or similar to what you came up with. And it's because of that skeptical doubt that's getting in the way. It's like, oh, what about me? What about, like, what do I know? Maybe this is wrong, all this kind of stuff. There's so many different ways that this can appear. In this way, we're gonna define it as it's because we're too skeptical, because we're too doubtful. There can be a million other ways that this can happen, but we're gonna do it as this because this is what the video is about. If you ever had that experience, a little mindset shift that you can do, if you've identified that this is a problem and this is a pattern, like over a few weeks or over whatever you want it to be, if you've identified that, well, then what you can do is you can use that same part of you, or like that same part of you that has the skeptical doubt, you can turn it in on itself, and you can say, well, I can always remember that this doubt is also not infallible, the same way that I'm not infallible, and I can just turn myself into that and start doubting the self-doubt, basically. And when you do this, like, it's kind of a little bit difficult, or it might be a little bit difficult to kind of wrap your head around. But once you turn the doubt in and of itself, and you use that amazing capacity to actually be humble and not just take your own word for it, for lack of a better term, what starts to happen is you start to be a lot more creative. All right, I don't want to get hit by those waves. These waves over here are coming pretty close. But yeah, you don't want to get rid of that doubt capacity, you want to use it. A mark of a good kind of coaching system, or good mentor, or good whatever it is somebody who, instead of just straight eliminates something from your personality, they try and incorporate it in a more healthy, integrated way. Because if we were to try, like let's say someone is really having trouble with having an overly logical, skeptical mind, all that kind of stuff, and they just want to get rid of it. Let's say you go to somebody and they try and say, okay, let's get rid of it. Well, hold on a moment, maybe it's coming from shadow, maybe, and for a few of my clients, it was coming from shadow. It was coming from lack of belief in themselves, thinking that humility, like having a kind of strange version of looking at humility, or feeling like this was the safe route even though it wasn't. So an example of that was my client kept on getting breakthroughs, but instead of getting the full 100% of breakthrough, he would just allow himself to get maybe 80 or 90% of the breakthrough, because this last 10% was like, oh yeah, but I don't want to be disappointed if I don't get the full breakthrough. Meanwhile, that's the thing that's stopping him from getting the full breakthrough, right? It's funny how these patterns start. So that can happen. But also what can happen is you can think, hey, hello. What's up? Self-actualization systems. Take care, boys. All right. And yeah, let me just get my train of thought back. I'm getting old. Oh, so basically, there's lots of different ways it can be coming from shadow, right? But a lot of the time, doubt or skepticism is actually something which is arising spontaneously within us. It's something which is bottom up rather than top down. Yeah? The name of the channel is, do you want to be on camera? No, it's okay. The channel is Self-Actualization Systems. Okay? Have a nice day. So, bottom up basically is a concept where something is arising in you naturally, right? Like for instance, if like happiness is arising from you, you don't want to suppress that because it's arising spontaneously in something. Let's say somebody gives you a compliment, or somebody is interested in you, or maybe you have a raise at work, right? Then this happiness is arising naturally, right? You don't want to suppress that. But if you're trying to force yourself to be happy, when you're actually feeling sad, like let's say you get demoted at work, or you get fired, or something bad happens family-wise, if that happens, you do not want to top down and force yourself to be happy. So in the same way, we need to look at, rather than just trying to get rid of something which is holding us back, we actually want to first look at, is this coming from some kind of intuitive, impromptu, bottom-up experience, i.e., yes, I'm very doubtful and I'm kind of stuck in this skeptical worldview, but actually, does it have a point? Like, what is the value in this? What is the, what does it want to say? Like maybe the doubt is coming up because I actually should be doubting myself right now. Why? Because maybe I don't have the skills that I thought I had to. Maybe I'm actually being shown a different worldview which I'm not experienced with, right? We always want to look at, can we include the experience of something as long as it's arising naturally and it's not coming from shadow. So a quick thing that you can check if something's coming from shadow or not is it's kind of the experience of most of the time, let's say you have like a normal openness or periphery, right? What that means is, like right now I'm just chilling, I'm by the sea, I'm shooting a video, or all that kind of stuff, I'm talking. Like I have a normal sense of perspective, like I have access to my same amount of perspectives, I'm not tunnel visioning on anything. How you know you're kind of in a shadow pattern is that you suddenly get really tunnel vision, and there's a lot of tension and tightness in the body and in the mind. Because when you're in a shadow perspective, that perspective, depending on how big the shadow is the only perspective that matters, right? So if the doubt is coming from this, and suddenly when you're in a doubtful phase, the doubt is the only thing that you have access to, that's how you know you're in a shadow pattern. Now for one of my clients, there's one I'm thinking of in particular, we'll call him Smith. I always come up with these I always come up with these strange names because it's just what comes to mind. But Smith, right, the guy who would consistently get breakthroughs, and these breakthroughs got exponentially more powerful and bigger as the coaching went on and we're still doing work together. With Smith, he wasn't able to unlock the full power of the breakthroughs because there was part of him which is like, yeah, he would always say stuff like, yeah, I'll go out and try that. I'll go out and test that. Now, this is a great thing. You don't want to be taking breakthroughs and coaches on blind faith. I would definitely say you do not want to be doing that. However, this is the nuance of it. There's nothing wrong with being like, because he would feel the breakthrough. I wasn't making, you can't convince someone of making a breakthrough or an insight. Suddenly he would have a problem, and then that problem would not be there anymore after the session, okay? Like problems around socializing, relationships, work politics, all this kind of stuff would no longer be there anymore. However, it's the skepticism and the self-doubt, like, oh, but maybe it didn't work. Maybe this isn't possible, right? That's the thing that was actually holding him back from getting even more results, right? So actually, once we identified that, we were able to work through the skepticism, but we were able to incorporate it first. Wow, like what is the real amazingness, the amazing part of this, the positive intention of this skeptical part? But what it is, it doesn't want him to be disappointed. It wants to be sure. It wants him to be accurate. It wants to make sure that, everything's okay. So that was great. And then we were able to incorporate that whilst it not actually holding back from him getting the full breakthrough, basically. And part of that was realizing that the doubt in of itself is not infallible, which leads to the last point of this video, which is arising for me right now, which is the fact that a lot of the time, if we're in an overly skeptical worldview, which by the way is a worldview which is something which you can call it in so many different ways. I like to call it the critical faculty, partly inspired by one of my big influences, a hypnotist and a hypnotherapist called James Tripp. And the critical faculty, powered by skepticism, or powered by, I wouldn't call it a more rationalistic worldview. What I would call it is something which is more objectively focused, which becomes a problem when you're measuring something subjective, right? Because you can't measure it objectively, really. There's some overlap, but not really. And in the critical faculty, change is really hard. Like, you can probably think of a few people that have kind of remained the same person over decades, over years. And it's because they have an overly skeptical worldview. They have their worldview and they don't question it. Or they question everything. So they're kind of under the guise that they're questioning things, but what they don't question is their underlying assumptions about the world. And this leads to very stale storylines. Now, if you already have good storylines, then great. That's the point of being in a critical worldview. But a lot of the time, the doubt and the skepticism is above questioning within them. And whenever something is above questioning within you, that for sure, if it's not now, is going to become a major blind spot. And the problem with blind spots is because we don't see them, we don't see the damage that the blind spots are causing to us. And they usually affect relationships, they affect fulfillment in life. So there's another client who we'll call Damn, I'm blanking on names right now. We'll call him... Come on, Aaron, just pick of it. Just pick a name. We'll call him David again, okay, right? So with David, this is actually one of the things that he wanted to work on. So the first thing he wanted to work on was kind of like relationship dynamics, how to understand the other person better, and all of that kind of good stuff. But what it soon went into was also being able to be happy and fulfilled in life, which is why we got him work on some meditation, some shadow work to help him out with that. Because what this skepticism also does is it stops him from fully enjoying the moment, whether it's with his family, whether it's with his girlfriend, whether it's after work, whether it's any of this kind of stuff. It stops him from getting full enjoyment in life, even though, like I said, he's living a great life. Like, doesn't have to work, semi-retired, made a bunch of money, has a great family life, all that kind of stuff. It just stopped him from fully enjoying it because there was some kind of probably some kind of underlying skepticism around being allowed to actually feel that way. And that's one of the big kind of overarching themes that we're working on. But a lot of the time, skepticism and doubt in and of itself is above suspicion. Whenever something is above suspicion, that's always something to investigate. So with the phrase, remember, you can always doubt the self-doubt. It's not just a fun little mindset shift, although it is, for sure. You can get it at so many different levels. It's also about investigating, does this self-doubt, or is this self-doubt in and of itself, like the actual doubt in and of itself, is that above suspicion within me? Why is it that I never question the self-doubt? Why is it that it's the one that has all of the power over me? Most of the time it's because you're projecting onto it. Doubt or skepticism is seen as super intelligent, is seen as above questioning. If that's the case, you're gonna take that power back. And for that, I have the most practical guide to shadow work on the internet, link below and in bio. It's got 3 hours of super in-depth, not just looking at individual shadow work and how to release introduce reown projections. It's got the whole ecosystem of shadow work that I've spent almost half a decade, or a little bit over half a decade, being interested in and coaching. It does all of that, right? It has all of that incorporated. So go ahead and download it. It's completely free. It will change your life, basically. And it will help you with the projections, if that's a projection. And most of the time it will also be because there's some kind of an introjection or ego state. So maybe if we run this by, it'll be an ego state, which is, for whatever reason, got educated and thought that this was the best way to run life, to be really skeptical of everything, and it's worked. Or there's an introjection and insecurity around your own sense of self-judgment, your own sense of being right about things, all that kind of good stuff. So like I said, got my free product. Go ahead and download it. Completely free. And if you've never done shadow work ever before, not only does it give you the whole system, it also runs you through what a session looks like, and then it has a 4-week guide at the end, which can take you from having done absolutely zero shadow work to being able to get straight to the core wound and heal the core wound. So you get transformational change rather than incremental piece by piece change. So that's the video for now, and hope you enjoy.